Questions for reflection. In our first reading, the Israelites are complaining bitterly against their leaders and therefore against the Lord himself, who had set these leaders in place and worked through them. They need water for themselves and their livestock. Moses, frustrated with their lack of faith, asks God what he ought to do. God instructs him to address the rock to release water, under the authority which God himself would give to him. Then he, the Lord, would send forth water. But Moses himself sins. First, he angrily lectures the people, although he was not told to do so. And then he strikes the rock with his staff, not once, but twice. For this lack of faith and obedience, Moses would be denied entry into the Promised Land. Even though Moses was a great prophet, indeed the scriptures say a friend of God, sin, which is an abuse of freedom, offends God and brings consequences. God made no exception for him. Note that God still gave the Israelites abundance. He still satisfied their needs. But they did not escape the consequences of their poor behavior, their wrong choices, their sin. The Catholic Catechism addresses the sobering implications of the exercise of human freedom when it reminds us that, quote, mortal sin is a radical possibility of human freedom, as is love itself. That's paragraph 1861. In other words, what we choose truly matters. Authentic human freedom cannot be realized in decisions made against God. In his encyclical letter on faith and reason, St. John Paul II wrote, and I quote, "It is not just that freedom is part of the act of faith, it's absolutely required. Indeed, it is faith that allows individuals to give consummate expression to their own freedom. Put differently, freedom is not realized in decisions made against God." And the Pope continues, "For how could it be an exercise of true freedom to refuse to be open to the very reality which enables our self-realization? Men and women can accomplish no more important act in their lives than the act of faith. It is here that freedom reaches the certainty of truth and chooses to live in that truth." And that's Faith and Reason, Fides et Ratio, paragraph 13. Choosing the good, following God's commands, is the pathway to the realization of the fullness of authentic human freedom, flourishing, and real happiness. Again, the Catechism explains, and I quote, "The more one does what is good, the freer one becomes. There's no true freedom except in the service of what is good and just. The choice to disobey and do evil is an abuse of freedom and leads to the slavery of sin." Quoting Romans 6:17, and that's paragraph 1733 of the Catechism. Let's reflect today on our own choices, our own behavior. Where do we abuse our freedom when we face trials and frustrations? How do we behave? What do we choose? Our responsorial psalm reminds us that we should never put God to the test. He is God. We are not. He has proven himself many times. Let us ask ourselves if we test God when we want something we do not really need, or perhaps something which would harm rather than help us. Or do we demonstrate our faith and trust in the Lord to give us what we need when the time is right? Catholic moral teaching offers a unique insight that has enormous potential. That which we choose not only changes the world around us, but changes us. In simple words, we become what we choose. Let us choose today not to put God to the test, but rather to believe him and obey him. Let us choose to put God and his will before all else. The gospel reading is taken from chapter 16 of the Gospel of St. Matthew. Jesus asked the most important question of his disciples, "Who do you say I am?" Only Peter answers the question properly, "You are the Christ." And in that encounter, we see Jesus establish Peter as the rock upon which the church would be built because of his response in faith. That same question is asked of each one of us. Who do you say that I am? It's not just asked once, but continually. It's meant to inform the response of our entire life. How we answer that question determines who we will become, and how we will live. It's a question which cannot be answered indirectly or half-heartedly. It's not enough to rely on what some say. The question is profoundly personal as well as public. Who is Jesus Christ to me? And how does my answer affect the way I live? However, notice that the right response to Jesus once does not make him immune from making a wrong choice, even right after a right choice. We see Jesus rebuke Peter a few verses later, when Peter demonstrates his own lack of faith. Jesus knew that his crucifixion was part of God's plan of salvation for all people. But Peter, in his lack of faith, could only see the cost to himself. He did not want Jesus to die, even though that was God's plan. All too often, we want something different from what God intends. This is because we do not keep our gaze fixed on Jesus Christ. We do not allow living faith to change the way we view everything. So when we do not get what we want, when we want it, we murmur as the Israelites did, without appreciating that God is leading us to something much better. Or we waffle like Peter did. We need to learn from both examples and to realize yesterday's choices are not sufficient for today. We must choose obedience to the Lord every day. We must make Jesus Lord every day. Let us ask, is there something I am impatient for? Is there something that I want and I'm upset because God will not let me have it? Reflect for a moment and consider that God is denying you this want because he has greater plans in store. Who do you say that Jesus is to you? Who is he to you today? How you answer that question, and not just once, but every day, will determine who you become as well.